My name is Marcus Dunn. I was 39 years old, and I had spent the last 17 years serving in the National Guard. I had seen dust storms in Iraq, wildfires in California, and flooded towns in Louisiana. I had learned to sleep in helmets, eat cold meals, and follow orders that made no emotional sense. But nothing in my training prepared me for the message I received on a Tuesday afternoon while stationed 3 hours outside of Tulsa. I had been on emergency duty for 2 weeks, following a tornado that ripped through rural Oklahoma. We were setting up temporary shelters, assisting rescue teams, and managing panicked families looking for their children or livestock or both. My hands were cracked, my boots worn out, and my phone rarely had service. But that afternoon, while unloading supply crates, I stepped outside the staging tent and caught a signal. My phone lit up with one message. "I cannot do this anymore. I have moved out. Please do not contact me." It was from my wife, Hannah. We had been married for 6 years. She was a school nurse, smart, and always organized. She knew how to pack for camping, balance the checkbook, and remember people's birthdays when I forgot. I was not a perfect husband, but I was loyal. I wrote her every week when I was away. I made sure our mortgage was paid early. I wore the watch she gave me on our 3rd anniversary every day. Now I was just a name in her phone with a blocked contact status. I tried calling, no answer. I texted back once. "Where are you?" No reply. The next morning, I called our neighbor, Melinda. She had lived next door to us for nearly a decade and had keys to our house in case of emergencies. Her voice cracked when she spoke. "Marcus, I am sorry. She left with a moving truck 3 days ago. Said she was relocating. She told me not to say anything." My mouth went dry. "Did she say why?" "No, only that it was done. That she could not live like this anymore." I stood in the shade behind a generator, trying to keep my heart from breaking through my chest. I had handled trauma before. Fires, explosions, screaming civilians. But this was different. This was personal. And worst of all, it felt rehearsed. She had planned this. I finished my deployment in silence. I returned to our base camp, packed up my gear, and drove back to Kansas, with one hand on the wheel and the other clenched around the last photo we took together. I opened the door to an empty house. Not just furniture gone, everything gone. Curtains, spices, half the kitchenware, even the dog's bed. I walked through each room slowly, hearing my own footsteps echo in places where memories used to live. She had left a note taped to the fridge. "This is not sudden. I have felt this way for a long time. I am sorry I did it like this, but I had to." She had signed it with just an initial, H. That night, I did not cry. I sat on the floor in the empty living room, stared at the blank TV screen, and thought about how she had told me she wanted space during my last deployment, how she had been distant since I got promoted to logistics officer and started spending more time away, how she had stopped wearing her ring around the house. I had dismissed it as stress. Now I knew better. 2 days later, I got a call from my bank. "There was a recent transfer of funds," the woman on the line said. "Your joint account was cleared. $28,000. Moved to an account we cannot access because your name is not on it." I did not need to ask whose account it was. The betrayal was complete. But what Hannah did not know was that I had seen the signs. Maybe not all of them, but enough. 6 months earlier, I had created a contingency folder. It included a list of all our shared assets, a notarized document authorizing the transfer of vehicle titles, back to me in case of separation, and a legal directive for my military pension. I had also pre-filed divorce papers, an idea given to me by my superior, Captain Simmons, who had gone through something similar and told me, "Prepare like it is battle, because sometimes it will be." Those papers had been drawn up with a blank date. All I had to do now was choose the right one, and I knew exactly which day to pick. It was the date she had moved out, 3 days before her text. 3 days before she had the nerve to say she could not do it anymore, as if I had forced her hand. I drove to my attorney's office. Her name was Kendra Wallace. She had handled military divorces before. When I handed her the documents and the new date, she looked at me carefully. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I want her to be served next week, with everything she walked away from." She nodded. "You will want to include your evidence of abandonment. That will speed things up." I had plenty. Photos of the empty house, records of the cleared joint account, text messages, the notarized contingency plan. We filed the paperwork the next morning, And then I waited. But I was not just going to sit in silence. I started going through every part of my life she had touched. Utilities, insurance, storage units, and reclaiming them. I contacted the vet and transferred our dog's microchip data back to my name. I found his bed in the garage, folded into a plastic bin she had not bothered to take. I picked him up from her sister's house 2 towns over without saying a word. He ran into my arms like he had never left. She had taken things. But I was about to take everything she assumed would be hers forever. Because when you leave someone by text, while they are serving the country and standing in the mud next to strangers, trying to find shelter, you do not just walk away clean. You leave a trail. And I was following every footprint she left behind. The divorce papers were served to Hannah on a Wednesday morning, just 2 weeks after I filed them. According to my attorney's assistant, she had looked stunned when the courier handed her the envelope. Not angry, not defensive, just frozen. I imagined her standing there in whatever new apartment she had moved into, reading her own name in bold legal font, seeing the words Petitioner Marcus Dunn and date of separation February 10th, the day she had moved out without a word. That date mattered more than she understood. By backdating the paperwork, I had placed myself in the legal position of the one who had been abandoned, not the one reacting. That meant I had leverage, not only in court but also with asset division, spousal claims, and legal standing with our joint mortgage. I had never wanted to use this kind of strategy, but she had made it a game. I was just playing smarter. The following week, her attorney called mine. She wanted to talk. She had questions. She said she felt blindsided. I almost laughed when I heard that. Blindsided, like receiving a breakup message. While coordinating storm relief efforts in a flood-drenched tent, my attorney told her no discussion would happen unless it was formal, on the record, and in mediation. She agreed. We met at a neutral office in Wichita, a long conference table between us. She wore the same black coat she used to wear on winter dates. I noticed she was not wearing her wedding ring. She looked tired. Her eyes scanned the room, then stopped on me. "Why did you file so fast?" she asked. I did not speak right away. I wanted her to feel the weight of the silence. "You ended this while I was in uniform, standing ankle-deep in someone else's ruined home," I said. "You walked out before I even knew what was happening. So I just formalized what you started." She shifted in her seat. "It was not like that. You emptied our account. I needed to leave. I needed money. So you left a man bleeding into the dirt and took the last clean towel." She said nothing. Her lawyer spoke next, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, we can go back and forth on emotional framing, but we are here for terms. Hannah is requesting 50% of the house equity and compensation for the joint savings." My attorney slid a packet of documents across the table. "Not going to happen," she said. "We have proof that the petitioner was the sole contributor to the mortgage for the last 5 years. The down payment came from his military bonus. Also, these bank statements show multiple, unauthorized withdrawals from the joint account prior to the formal separation. Those funds will be considered marital waste." Hannah's eyes widened slightly. She had not known we had tracked every transaction. She had assumed I would be too heartbroken, too disoriented to act. That was her real miscalculation. Her lawyer began to push back. "These are strong claims, but they are supported by notarized documentation, digital tracking, and witness statements." My attorney interrupted. "If we go to court, you will lose more than equity. You will lose face, and he will still walk out clean." Hannah swallowed hard. "What do you want, Marcus?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "I want peace, but I also want dignity. You left without giving me either." The room went quiet. In the end, we settled under terms that leaned heavily in my favor. I kept the house. She forfeited any claim to my pension. I agreed to let her keep the furniture she had taken and did not pursue. Repayment for the dog's vet bills, utilities, or legal fees. She asked for nothing else. But it was not over. 2 days later, I received a handwritten letter in my mailbox. No return address, just a folded note sealed in plain white. "Marcus, I never stopped loving you. I just stopped knowing how to live with someone who was always leaving. Every time you packed your bag, I felt like you were disappearing, piece by piece. I know what I did was cowardly. I will not justify it. But I needed you to know I never meant to become your enemy. I just wanted to feel chosen." I read it twice. Then a third time. and then I burned it in the fireplace. Not out of anger, but because I needed a clean ending. I could not keep holding on to words from someone who had already let go of actions. I took the final decree from the courthouse the next week, stamped, filed, complete. On the way home, I stopped by the diner where we had celebrated our engagement. The same red vinyl booths, the same old jukebox humming in the corner. I ordered coffee, sat in the back, and looked around. The world had not stopped. It had not mourned our marriage. It had just kept going. And so would I. Later that evening, I received a call from Captain Simmons. He asked if I was available for an administrative assignment in Tennessee, short term, 6 weeks, low intensity. I said yes. The next morning, I packed my gear with calm hands. No shaking, no grief. Just routine. As I zipped the last duffel bag shut, I looked at the empty space in the hallway where Hannah's coat used to hang. And I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just space. And sometimes, space is the greatest gift betrayal leaves behind. Tennessee was quiet. The assignment was even quieter. I was stationed at a logistics center 30 minutes outside of Nashville, working 12-hour shifts that involved more paperwork than adrenaline. But that was exactly what I needed. Routine, focus, numbers that made sense, orders that did not change without warning. There was something therapeutic about working in systems that obeyed structure, where breakdowns had protocol and people showed up when they said they would. I spent my evenings in a small rental cabin just off a back road, surrounded by woods, a rusted grill out back, and silence that stretched into the trees. I did not miss Kansas. I did not miss the house or the town or the friends who had become her friends. I had taken only what I needed, my uniforms, my notebooks, and my grandfather's old pocket knife. Everything else had been left behind. Like an empty shell, I no longer needed to crawl back into. I stopped checking Hannah's social media accounts. For the first few weeks, I had checked them obsessively, scrolling through filtered photos and vague captions, trying to see if guilt had cracked through the surface. But it never did. It was all smiles, brunch plates, and new apartment decor. She had moved on with the ease of someone stepping from one platform to another. No stumble, no pause, just transfer. But in Tennessee, none of that mattered. I was not Marcus Dunn, the husband whose wife left by text. I was Sergeant Dunn, ID 308415, here to manage supply records and track warehouse inventory. It was during the 4th week that something unexpected happened. I was walking into a cafe just before closing time, hoping to grab a black coffee before heading back to the center. As I stepped in, a woman turned from the counter, almost bumping into me. She was holding a cup, wearing a tan coat and worn hiking boots. She smiled reflexively. "Sorry," she said. "My fault." I stepped aside. "No problem." She hesitated. "You are not from here, are you? Is it that obvious?" "The boots are military issue," she said. "My brother wore the same ones." That is how I met Natalie Brooks. She was a local environmental consultant, freelance, part-time trail volunteer, and full-time realist. We talked for 10 minutes that evening, then an hour the next. By the end of the week, we were meeting after work just to walk the trails near my cabin. We did not talk about relationships at first. We talked about terrain erosion, dog breeds, and which diner had the best pecan pie. It was simple, honest, and I found myself laughing in ways I had not in months. But what struck me most was that she never pried. She did not ask why I seemed emotionally distant. She did not push for stories. She just let silence fill the spaces that needed silence. One evening, sitting by the fire pit behind my cabin, she finally asked, "What happened before you came here?" I stared into the flames for a moment. Then I told her everything. The deployment, the message, the empty house, the backdated papers, the mediation. I told her about the letter, the silence, the way I had felt like a casualty of someone else's internal war. She listened without flinching. When I finished, she said, "That is not weakness. That is restraint. You did not explode. You responded." I had never thought of it like that before. The next morning, I received an email from my attorney. "Just a heads up," it began. Hannah filed a response in court requesting clarification on the final decree's date. She is trying to challenge the effective date of divorce, possibly to argue over pension access. I will handle it, but you should know she is not done. I closed the laptop without replying. It had been months. The terms were signed, the papers filed, the split complete. But some people cannot let go unless they are holding the last word. Hannah had always needed control, not out of malice, but out of fear. The idea that something might slip from her fingers made her grasp harder, even after it was gone. I forwarded the email to Captain Simmons. His response was dry but wise. Do not engage. Let your lawyer be the sword. You already walked away standing. And that was it. I would not fight her. I would not reply. I would not give her the satisfaction of knowing. She could still occupy space in my mind. Instead, I filed the message into a folder labeled Final. Then I shut the lid on that part of my life. 2 days later, I took Natalie to dinner. We talked about the future, not in specifics, but in tone. She asked what I planned to do when my deployment ended. I said I was not sure. For the first time in a long while, I did not feel rushed to figure it out. By the end of my 6 weeks in Tennessee, something inside me had settled. Not because of a new relationship or a fresh location, or even the passing of time, but because I had faced the worst someone could do to me, and I had chosen not to become like them in response. I had taken the betrayal and turned it into structure. I had taken the loss and turned it into movement. I had been left, but I had not become less. That distinction mattered. Because what Hannah never understood is that dignity is not loud. It does not make noise when it walks away. It just leaves quietly with everything still intact. On my final day, Natalie gave me a handwritten card. Inside it read, "Thank you for not being angry. You showed me what it looks like when someone protects themselves without destroying others. I hope you keep building wherever you land." I folded the card and placed it in the same compartment of my duffel bag where I had once stored our wedding license. That document was long gone. But this card, this one I kept. I returned to Kansas not because I missed it, but because I had things to finish, loose ends to tie. I did not visit the old neighborhood. I did not drive by the house. Instead, I moved into a small rental on the edge of town, started training new Guard recruits part-time, and applied for an advanced certification program in emergency logistics. The rest of my time I spent in calm routines. Morning runs, quiet meals, weekly phone calls with Natalie. She never asked for more than I could offer, and that in itself made me want to offer more. One Friday afternoon, I received a letter from the county clerk's office. It was a formal acknowledgement that Hannah's appeal had been denied. The date of divorce would stand as filed. No pension claims, no revisions, no court appearances. Just a simple line at the bottom. Case closed. I read it once. Then I folded it neatly and slipped it into the drawer of my desk, next to Natalie's card. One reminder of what had ended, one reminder of what had begun. Fall came early that year. Kansas mornings turned crisp, and the trees along the back roads shifted from green to firelight gold. I settled into a rhythm I had not known in years, one defined not by deployments or phone pings or emotional emergencies, but by stillness. There were no more unread messages that could shake me, no more long drives to an empty house, no more waking up wondering whether the person beside me had already emotionally left. That weight was gone, and in its place was clarity. Clean, quiet, earned clarity. I continued teaching at the training center, helping young soldiers prepare for the things no handbook ever truly captures. Logistics, yes. Tactics, of course. But more than that, I taught them steadiness. How to pause before reacting. How to read a situation fully before deciding who you want to be in it. Those lessons came from experience, not textbooks, and slowly I realized they had value. That my scars were not just healed, they were useful. One of the new recruits, a kid named Owen, came to my office after class one day. He closed the door behind him, awkward and fidgeting. "Sergeant Dunn," he said, "can I ask you something?" I nodded. He hesitated, then asked, "How do you keep going after someone betrays you?" "Like really betrays you?" His voice cracked slightly. I did not ask for details. I did not need to. Pain always has the same shape, even if the story is different. I leaned back in my chair and thought for a moment before answering. "You give yourself back everything they tried to take," I said. "Not just the house or the dog or the money. I mean the part of you that trusts, that dreams, that believes you deserve better. You do not get over it. You rebuild over it. And that takes time. But it is yours to do." He nodded slowly. "Did you rebuild?" "I'm still rebuilding," I said. "But I am not doing it for them. I am doing it for me." That night, I sat in my small living room, holding the card Natalie had given me before I left Tennessee. Her words echoed softly in my mind. Thank you for not being angry. It had taken all the strength I had to hold that line, to not lash out, to not destroy what little remained of a shared history just because it hurt. But in the end, that choice had become my freedom. Hannah's betrayal had taught me what I would never accept again. But more importantly, it reminded me who I still was, even after everything. A month later, Natalie visited Kansas. It was unseasonably warm for November, and we spent most of her weekend visit walking the trails outside town. We talked about small things, her work, my classes, what we were both reading. But on the last night, while sitting at a picnic table beneath a sky full of stars, she asked, "Do you think there is room in your life for more than peace?" I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean joy, not just calm, not just survival, real joy." I thought about it. I had spent so much time trying to feel nothing, no anger, no longing, that I had forgotten what it felt like to hope. But she was right. There is a difference between healing and living. "Yes," I said finally. "I think I'm ready for that." She smiled, reached across the table, and took my hand. Nothing more needed to be said. We spent the winter visiting each other every 2 weeks. No pressure, no plans, just presence. I began writing again, essays mostly, about resilience and ethics in the face of failure. I submitted a few to veterans' journals. One was published. I sent a copy to Captain Simmons with a note that read, "You were right. The sword was silence." He sent back one line, "And you wielded it better than most." I never heard from Hannah again. Not directly. A friend of a friend mentioned that she had moved to Austin, started dating someone new, and was working as a school counselor. I felt nothing when I heard it. Not bitterness, not relief, just neutrality. That is how you know it is over. Not when you hate them, but when you no longer have to rehearse forgiveness every time their name comes up. One evening, while cleaning out an old storage box, I found our wedding photo. I paused, stared at it for a long moment, then tucked it into the back of a drawer, not to hide it, but to place it where it belonged. It had happened. It had ended. And I had moved on. Natalie moved to Kansas the following spring. She did not move in right away. She got her own place across town, started working with a land conservation nonprofit, and planted sunflowers in pots along her porch. We took things slow. We built without rushing, and in doing so, we learned what it meant to grow something from scratch, not as a rebound, not as a replacement, but as something real. One afternoon, while walking through a field just beyond the city limits, she asked if I regretted how I handled the divorce. I thought about the papers, the backdated date, the quiet war fought with signatures and silence. "No," I said. "Because I did not just react," I responded. "That matters to me." She nodded. "You never lost yourself in it." "That was the one thing I refused to give her," I said. In time, we made new memories in places that held no ghosts. The diner where we became regulars, the park bench where we first said we were in love, the small cabin up north we visited every fall, where the fire never quite stayed, lit but the conversations never stopped flowing. And though the past would always be a part of me, it no longer defined me. It was just one chapter. A hard one, yes, but not the ending. Because sometimes, when someone walks away and leaves you broken, the greatest revenge is not their punishment. It is your peace. And mine? Mine came in the form of slow mornings, laughter that did not require explanation, a woman who never once made me feel like I was too much or not enough, and a life that no longer had to be justified. I had rebuilt. And this time, the foundation was mine alone.